In 218 BC, a general from a city Rome had already beaten once led 50,000 men and 37 war elephants over the Alps in winter. He did it to destroy Rome from the inside. 26,000 of them died on the mountain. The rest came down into Italy, and won the next 3 battles. His name was Hannibal Barca. And he is the reason Rome almost ended 400 years before it became an empire. To understand what Hannibal was doing on a mountain in October, you have to understand what his father had done in a desert 20 years earlier. His father was Hamilcar Barca. Hamilcar had fought Rome in the First Punic War, 23 years of grinding naval slaughter, and Carthage had lost. Lost Sicily. Lost Sardinia. Lost an indemnity so heavy it almost broke the city. According to Polybius, Hamilcar took his 9-year-old son to the altar of Baal Hammon and made the boy swear an oath, never to be a friend of Rome. Hannibal would carry that oath for the rest of his life. By 218 BC, Hannibal was 29 years old. He was the commander of Carthage's army in Spain, a colonial frontier his family had spent 2 decades rebuilding into a war machine. He had a fortune in silver from Iberian mines. He had hardened veterans, Libyans, Iberians, Celts, Numidians. He had elephants. And he had a plan no one in Rome thought was possible. He would not attack by sea. The Roman navy now ruled the western Mediterranean. He would not attack from Africa. He would march across the Pyrenees, across southern Gaul, across the Rhone, and over the Alps. And he would arrive in northern Italy with an army already inside the walls of the Roman world. In May of 218 BC, he marched. The most dangerous 29-year-old in the ancient world was coming for Rome. The first thing the Alps cost Hannibal was not blood. It was numbers. By the time he reached the Pyrenees, he had already lost thousands. Some to skirmishes with Iberian tribes who didn't want a Carthaginian army eating its way through their valleys. Some to the simple math of beating 60,000 men on the move. And some, Polybius is blunt about this, to desertion. He sent home 10,000 Iberian troops who had lost their nerve. He wanted men who had chosen to follow him over a mountain. Then came the Rhone. The Volsci held the eastern bank in force. So Hannibal did what good generals do. He cheated. He sent a detachment upstream by night, had them cross at a calmer ford, and circle around behind the Gallic camp. At dawn, the Volsci woke up to a Carthaginian army on both sides of them. They broke. They ran. The crossing began. But the elephants would not get on the rafts. Polybius describes the engineers' solution in detail. They built 2 enormous earth-covered piers running out into the river, so the elephants thought they were still walking on solid ground. The piers ended in floating rafts disguised as more earth. Once each elephant was led on, the lines were cut, and the rafts were pulled across by smaller boats. Most of them held. Shorts_candidate, some elephants panicked anyway, plunged into the river, and walked across the bottom, breathing through raised trunks like snorkels, their mahouts drowning above them. The most famous animal in ancient military history hated water, and almost broke Hannibal's army before he ever reached the Alps. The coastal road into Italy was the obvious route. The Romans were already on it. A Roman consul named Scipio had landed near modern Marseille with 2 legions, expecting to meet Hannibal there. So Hannibal did the thing nobody expected. He turned north. Toward the mountains his African and Iberian troops had never seen. In the season no general had ever crossed them. The Alps did not want them. For 2,000 years, historians have argued about which pass he used. The most likely answer is now in the dirt. In 2016, a team led by geomorphologist William Mahaney published soil cores taken from a churned-up mire just below the Col de la Traversette, a brutal pass nearly 3,000 meters above sea level on the modern French-Italian border. The cores contained a layer of dung, horse, mostly, with microbial signatures of large herbivore gut bacteria, carbon dated to within decades of 218 BC. An army's worth of pack animals had stopped to drink at that spring. 2,200 years later, the soil still remembered them. The climb took roughly 15 days. And the locals were waiting for them. The Allobroges held the high valleys. They did not need to win pitched battles. They needed to roll rocks. From cliffs above narrow paths, they sent down avalanches of stone onto a column that could not turn, could not deploy, could not run. Mules went over the edge with their loads. Men went over the edge with their mules. A war elephant, struck on a path 2 meters wide, does not have anywhere to go. Shorts_candidate. Hannibal fought a night action with his light troops to seize the high ground above the path. Only then could the army move again. The dead were not buried. There was nowhere to bury them. Then came the snow. Most of the men in Hannibal's column had grown up in North Africa or southern Spain. They had never seen a snowflake. Now they were sleeping in it. Polybius writes that the army stopped at the summit for 2 days. Partly to rest. Partly because a fresh blizzard had buried the descent path. Hannibal walked the line. He pointed south, down toward the valleys of the Po. And he told his army, Polybius gives us the speech in outline, that the walls of Italy were behind them now. From here, they were walking on to Rome itself. The descent was worse than the climb. The path had iced over. Men slipped. Elephants slipped. An entire stretch had given way in a recent landslide and had to be rebuilt by the army in 3 days. Livy claims they cracked the rock with fire and vinegar. Polybius does not mention it. What is not in doubt is this. When Hannibal walked his army down into the Italian foothills in early November of 218 BC, he had lost half of everyone who had left Spain. 26,000 men, gone. But he had done it. He was inside. The Romans did not believe he was there. The Senate had sent its consul Publius Cornelius Scipio to block Hannibal in southern Gaul. Scipio had arrived to find the Carthaginian army already gone. He sailed back to Italy fast, raised more troops in the north, and went looking for an enemy he had not believed could be on his side of the Alps. The other consul, Tiberius Sempronius Longus, was recalled from Sicily, where he had been planning an invasion of Carthage itself. In December of 218 BC, the two armies met at the Trebia River in northern Italy. Hannibal had read his Romans well. He sent his Numidian cavalry across the river at dawn to skirmish with the Roman camp, and run. Sempronius chased them. He marched his men out of camp before breakfast. He marched them across the freezing chest-deep Trebia. And when the Roman line formed up on the far bank, soaked, hungry, shivering, Hannibal's full army was already deployed in front of them. Including his elephants. Including a hidden detachment of 2,000 picked troops under his brother Mago, lying flat in a streambed behind the Roman line. The elephants went in on the wings. The Roman flanks broke. Mago's hidden detachment rose from the streambed and hit the Roman rear. The legions in the center, the best of them, actually punched through Hannibal's line and escaped the field. Everyone else died in the river or on the bank. The Trebia ran red into the Po. 6 months later, at Lake Trasimene, he ambushed a Roman army inside a lakeside defile and killed 15,000 men in a single morning. The consul Flaminius died with them. And then, in August of 216 BC, came Cannae. At Cannae, Hannibal did something that 2,000 years of military students would still be studying. He deliberately let his weak center bend backward, drawing the Roman legions deeper and deeper into a pocket. His Iberian and African veterans on the wings swung around behind them. By the end of the afternoon, somewhere between 50 and 70,000 Romans were dead. Perhaps the bloodiest single day of combat in human history before the First World War. The maneuver is called a double envelopment. It is still taught at West Point. It is taught with Hannibal's name on it. He had won 3 battles. He had killed something close to 100,000 Romans. He was, by any measure, the most successful invader Rome had ever faced. He still lost the war. Of the 37 war elephants that walked out of New Carthage in May of 218 BC, only a handful reached Italy. By the spring of 217 BC, almost all of them were dead. Cold. Disease. Wounds from trebia that never healed in the wet Italian winter. The sources mention them, and then stop mentioning them. There is one exception. One elephant is named in our sources as Surus, the Syrian. He may have been Hannibal's personal mount. He carried the general through the marshes of central Italy, after Hannibal lost the sight in one eye to infection. 37 elephants. Reduced to a single name in a footnote. Hannibal stayed in Italy for 15 more years. He never took Rome. He could not. He had no siege train. No reinforcements from home. And a Roman strategy under the dictator Fabius Maximus that simply refused to give him another open battle. The Romans rebuilt their legions. Faster than he could destroy them. They invaded Spain. They invaded Africa. In 202 BC, on a dusty plain south of Carthage called Zama, a Roman general named Scipio Africanus did to Hannibal what Hannibal had done to everyone else. Hannibal lost. Carthage lost. He went into exile, hunted by Rome across the eastern Mediterranean for the next 20 years. Until he poisoned himself in a small house in Bithynia rather than be taken alive. And the Alps stayed exactly where they were. He took an army over them in winter. He won every battle he fought on the other side. And he still lost. That is the part the bronze inscriptions never quite explain. And the part every general since has tried to learn from. If this changed how you see the ancient world, subscribe. We reconstruct a lost age every week.